welcome to the Tyre Recycling Podcast, the leading video series for the tyre recycling sector. If you don't know me, I'm Richard Wilson and I'm a contributor to Tyre Recycling. And as usual in our podcast, Ewan Scott, the magazine's editor, is on hand to guide us through the episode. Ewan, how are you doing?
Just fine today. I've got peace and quiet. We've got builders round just now, and unfortunately, or unfortunately as the case may be, they've taken the day off. So it's all quiet at the moment. So we're good to go.
Definitely. Well, that's always nice to hear you got some peace and quiet on a Friday. But last time out on the podcast, we ventured north of the border to Scotland as you interviewed UK rubber. What have you got planned for viewers in today's instalment?
Today we're speaking to Jens Elton Andersen from Windspace in Denmark and Álvaro Silva from Elysium Nordic, their pyrolysis project based in Denmark. It's a new project and one that has received a fair bit of publicity recently.
Absolutely. Windspace as you've rightly mentioned, they've been in the news quite a lot recently with their partnership agreement with the Canadian firm Environmental Waste International, as we reported in Tyre Recycling. Is that where your attention is going to be focused in this interview, or are you looking to find out something more?
We really want to just find out what they're doing. There's been some changes in the dynamics at Elysium Nordic. The Enviro have pulled out of the project, and I think Jens Elton Andersen wanted to explain a little bit more about what the project is and what they're doing. So let's see where this takes us.
Great. Well, this sounds like it's going to be a fascinating watch. Now it's time for the interview from Windspace.
I'm Ewan Scott, editor of Tyre Recycling, and we're speaking with Álvaro Silva from Elysium Nordic and Jens Elton Andersen from Windspace. And so we're going to learn a bit about Windspace and what you're doing. So over to you, Jens.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about, initially, tell us a little bit about Windspace and what your aims are.
That's a good question. So in Windspace, we're very concerned about global warming. What we've done for 14 years is to develop and enable building of plants that can somehow contribute to reducing carbon emissions. So that's the overarching goal. That's what we do. What we have done is build more than 200 megawatts of turbines, wind turbines in Europe, and are still developing new projects. We developed almost 500 megawatts in total and expect to build more wind parks in the future. And then 3 years ago, we also developed a few PV plants, but we thought, well, wind energy and PV plants, that's a very good idea to help reducing carbon emissions. But there must be other new technologies that can do even more, where we can contribute more with our knowledge and skill in product development, designing, financing, everything. So we started looking for new technologies. And after a lot of searching, we have settled, for now at least, on this technology whereby we can treat end-of-life tires, handling the end-of-life tire pollution problem. At the same time, we are producing these recovered products that are highly valuable, and they are a lot of demand for those in the rubber industry, plastic industry, and so forth, and transport industry as well. So we're really keen to get this market rolling also. So we're using all the technology skill and all the other skills we have from our many years of experience of wind park development, and then putting that to use, using a lot of external consultants to help us understand this market of the tire recycling in order to maximize the environmental profit, you could say, that we can have from recycling them in a better way than we do now.
Okay, so this is how you've come about with the Elysium Nordic, this project for the pyrolysis, and we've seen notices, obviously, about joint ventures with EWI and formerly with Enviro. With Michelin becoming involved with Enviro, they've had to pull out. Where does this leave you?
I'd rather say that actually we, as we do not invent turbines, wind turbines, we do not invent these technology systems either. Both Enviro and also EWI have spent a lot of time and years and energy in refining their technologies. They're both good, they're just different. And I won't say that Michelin came out, we came into Enviro, we came out. It was more a process where we ended up, I would say, with EWI for us being a preferable supplier, because it just worked brilliantly with their technology and way of operating with what we intend to do in Europe.
Okay. So whereabouts are you in the process of developing the plant?
We are actually quite far. It is when you're developing plants like this, you can't really see how far you're going. But we actually have a building permit. We have an environmental permit to operate. We have a basic design that is almost good to go. We obviously need a little bit of detailed designing, but you could say within a few months we could actually be able to start the construction of the buildings to put in the plant.
Okay, so you'd be looking at production sometime next year.
We would be looking at construction sometime next year.
Construction. Yeah, okay. So construction next year, and then production hopefully the following year.
Yeah, and then we would, I would say, as this is proven technology in EWI, but we are still it's new to us, and we need to have it operating with a lot of it's scaled up a little bit, and we need to have all the auxiliary systems working properly and everyone trained. So we have allowed ourselves a few months to ramp up the testing, commissioning, and production.
If I can add something, it's that we are starting from a greenfield. You know, there's no building yet, so we're designing everything specifically for the plan that we're designing. So we just have like an empty field. We're gonna make a building, and then we're going to install all of the equipment. And the building itself takes many months already. So it's so for the whole process from beginning of construction until we're operating, we think it could take us about 2 years. I mean, and I think like we're aiming to go for like a proper size of a commercial plant. We feel like there's no reason to just go to it to do like a small plant or a medium. There's already experience with that, and what the market needs is capacity, and that's what we want to contribute with, and that just takes a little bit more of time.
Of course. Now, I've heard stories in the past of oil companies looking at pyrolysis and saying that if they were going to become involved in pyrolysis, they'd be looking at a plant that would be upwards of 50,000 tons a year. Is that the sort of scale capacity that you're looking at?
We're designing for capacity in any case, you would say, in the vicinity of 30,000 tons at least a year. To be able to get just a minimum amount, we'll still only get 15,000 ton approximately of oil, and in a refinery that's next to nothing. But it as big as we can build our first plant and still have it finalized and everything, and still it is enough for the oil companies and refineries to take it into account to try to utilize this product and maybe initially blend it into their other products. Hopefully, obviously, we want to build a few more plants, and then the amounts will be attractive to the oil companies.
Okay, so the feedstock for these plants, particularly this one in Denmark, where is the feedstock coming from?
I'll say we start with feedstock from Scandinavia. I would say that's the general idea. We don't want to transport tires too far. It's not worth enough, and it will leave too much emissions transporting tires. So we want to have them from close by Scandinavia, I would say initially. But we are situating the plant in Nyborg at the harbor, so it can be sailed in. So even if we at some point in time need to transport tires from farther away, it will be relatively efficient if they are just chipped off into smaller pieces before they're shipped on out to Nyborg.
Of course, the Scandinavian market gives you a bit of an open goal, because Norway and Sweden have virtually no tire recycling capacity at all just now. It's an interesting scenario that's developed there. And the feedstock that you would take, are you looking at whole tires or a tire chip?
We're looking at tire chips.
Tire chips.
Because they're just much easier to transport, and we don't want the hassle of them shipping them ourselves if we can avoid it. For now, we're building the first plant, so every complication that we can avoid, we will want to do that. So yeah. That is also the first chipping of the tires. We would prefer not to do those initially. Down the road, maybe we would, but initially we don't.
Okay. So
another thing is that with the tire feedstock, something that we are aiming at, it's to be able to receive different kinds of tires, like personal car tires, or like to put them on one side, and then more like truck or like more industrial tires to put them in some other side. And one of the things that we want to do is to process them individually and then be able to mix different kinds of carbon black obtained from the different feedstocks, so we could have different products. Like somebody may want carbon black that comes from tires. Those have like specific parameters and characteristics. So we will be able to provide that. Maybe we can find an application with a certain mix, So that's one of the things that we've been that we're going to have in our plants. The capacity to treat specific feedstocks and then to mix them if necessary.
That is good, because I was going to ask, you preempted my question. I was going to ask if you were going to go for just any old tires, or if you were going to be selective, because it's a bit of a key question. And the fact that you've already thought of that, that suggests you've gone further than a lot of people that have gone into pyrolysis.
Like one of the things that we've been one of the things that are new in this market, and that are not only new for us, but mostly like for everybody, is that, or for most of the companies like us, is that we need to find the applications for the carbon blacks. There's a market, we know there's a market out there, but we still need to find the products, need to find the needs, and we're trying to come here with capacity so we can offer that, so we can offer these products. And we're trying to think, how can we make this plant as flexible as possible so we can react to the market's demand, and we're trying to, we could go through like our plans, but it's just like we're trying to put as much flexibility as possible. Storage capacity, we're going to be able to deliver by truck, big bags. When I say trucks, I mean bulk. We have something that we call our main process, that is where the microwaves do the magic, separate the rubber into the different products. Then we have something that we call the after process, that is basically recovered carbon black refining. And we're putting a lot of thought of how do we make this as flexible as possible. How can we're going to have a jet mill, for example, that will allow us to have flexibility in the particle size. So if a client says, I need a better surface area, we can do that. I need a different means of transportation. Like, we want to say, we can do that. So that is something that and that's also why we're going to do that with the feedstock, because we want to be able to have flexibility. That's like the key word for us in the design of the plant.
Okay, so the selective processing gives you an advantage, and if you've got volume, which you're talking about, that changes the way the market can deal with you. There are a lot of pyrolysis plants around operating smaller volumes, and one of the biggest problems that they have is when a tire company, for example, comes along and says, can you supply us with N330 recovered carbon black? They can, but they can't supply the 50,000-60,000 tons that they need. So capacity is a big thing. Pyrolysis of whatever kind, I think, has moved past the research and development stage, and the companies that are coming into the market still doing R&D are going to get left behind, because you cannot, if the market's taken up with companies producing 50,000 or processing 50,000 tons a year, if you come along and you're only doing 3,000 tons, you're not going to get anywhere.
We look at it as the wind turbine market in 1980, where there are a lot of technologies, they are very diverse, and we haven't really found out how to do it, and the off-takers of the power are not so used to taking off this strange power from a wind turbine that is volatile. It's the same with the tire treatment that we're doing and the recovered products that we come out with. We need to eventually, 5 years down the road, we'll have quite a few plants that are relatively large. They can make a uniform product. It might not be top of the line, the finest carbon black in the world. It just needs to be the same, and it needs to be able to produce it and provide it in bulk. That's the main quality that we are going for, is to make the product uniform and in bulk. That's why we are developing the first plant in Nyborg, but that's certainly not the last plant we invent to build and operate.
In the same site that we have, we also have we have an option to rent the site that is beside, that is our neighbor site. So if necessary, we are going to have the possibility to expand the plant. If we are required to provide larger capacity. So that's also like another part of this flexibility that we will eventually be able to deliver.
We really see the industry moving forward, and we are really happy that others are moving forward as well, because we really need proven technology and to prove that there is a market for these recovered products. And that means that the off-takers need to take in this product and then find out how to blend it into their original products instead of the virgin materials that they're using right now. So we are very happy to be part of an industry in this tire processing that is moving forward very rapidly at the moment.
It is. I've watched for the past 20 years, and for the last 20 years, people have gone to conferences and they've talked about pyrolysis and what they were going to do and how it was going to work. And there's been some wonderful ideas, but very few of them have come to fruition. But in the last 18 months, the industry seems to have taken off, and there's a lot of interest now in pyrolysis. Unfortunately, there still seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about what can be done with this and what the outputs are and where the markets are. These are the big issues.
Now, there's been quite a few mishaps in the past. I think that many are learning from that, and that's why we are moving forward, because you're learning from the past. But also, I'll say the biggest push forward comes from the fact that the industry, the rubber industry, the plastic industry, the coloring industry, the oil industry, they all require to have more recovered materials in their materials, which they hadn't just 2 years ago. It has shifted immensely within the last 2 years. And that's just brilliant. And it's the only way to go if we want to reduce the carbon emissions. We need to exchange or get more value out of the end-of-life products in order to reuse them into new products.
And we're back. That was an enlightening discussion, Ewan. What did you make of it?
Interesting to see the investment in new technology. The microwave technology on a large scale is something that we're starting to see developing. We spoke to Bryce Powell recently, and he's looking at microwave technology. But this in Europe is a large scale operation using a technology that has not generally been used on a large scale now. So it would be interesting to see how this develops and just quite what sort of impact it has on the pyrolysis sector in Europe, competing against the conventional oven-based pyrolysis projects, whether they're continuous or batch process.
Absolutely. But leaving today's podcast behind for a moment, could you give our viewers a little insight into what they can expect in episode 11?
Episode 11, we go to the Lebanon. We're getting around nowadays. We're talking to a long-established company, Modern Advanced Polymers. We'll be speaking to the managing director, George Kassav.
Awesome. It's great to speak to people from around the world, not just to show the global nature of our magazine, but to show obviously what happens in smaller markets, because Tyre Recycling doesn't just happen in your major Western and European markets. So I'm really looking forward to that. But thanks for that, Ewan. We'll be back very shortly with the latest issue of the Tyre Recycling Podcast. Thank you for watching.